Alrighty, so I'm going to show off some of the modules, just do a quick run through of some of the Malekko modules, and then show some of the new modules that are coming out. So I will start off with the oscillator. So this is the wired Malekko oscillator, and it's a standard oscillator to start off with. So it has a breakout for each of your square, triangle, sine, and sawtooth waves. And it has a volt per octave input for pitch, and it also has a frequency modulation input, exponential, with an attenuator. And added to that, you've got a triangle, square, and sawtooth output that are phase modulatable. There, you can actually select a phase with a knob, and you can modulate it with an external source. And you can also flip it down into LFO range with a switch, which just makes it slower, makes it nicer as a modulator. So it gives you a really cool LFO that's phase offset. And you can do tricks like if you put the regular saw and then mix it with a phase modulated saw, you get kind of a similar to like almost a super saw animated sound that's really cool. And it's just a really nice oscillator. It has really nice modulation characteristics, and the phase modulation is really cool. There are a lot of tricks you can do with the phase modulation, like you can oscillate, or you can modulate another oscillator its pitch, and then send that oscillator back to the phase modulation of the wired oscillator, and you get a really cool kind of phase locked FM sound that's really neat. And another thing that is really nice about the wired oscillator is that it has a really clean sine wave for an analog oscillator. Now, the brother, it's kind of like the evil twin to the oscillator, is the anti-oscillator. And that is a triangle core oscillator. So it starts off life as a triangle oscillator, but it has a wave shaper built in. And so you've got your regular triangle output. And then you've got another output called mayhem, and mayhem is your wave-shaped output. And you have some wave shaping controls. And those controls can be modulated as well. And then the frequency inputs is you've got your regular volt per octave, and then you've also got a linear and an exponential input. And those are normal to take the output of the mayhem and feed them back into the module, so you get some more chaotic behavior. Just you can play along with this module by itself. So you get some nice chaotic sounds out of it, but it's also really good to use with a filter because although it has really high harmonics, filters really bite into it really well, and if you modulate it in just the right way, you can get some really nice organic sounds out of it. I often play with just putting a nice triangle into it that's running at a nice rate, and especially with the board one, you can get kind of like a struck metal type of sound that's really nice, like almost physical modeling in a way. And another thing that's neat is that you've got the triangle, which is clean, but since these inputs, the frequency modulation inputs are normal to the mayhem output, you can start with a triangle and then you can morph into kind of a more perverted waveform. So if you want to start with something that's clean, you can do like that also. So the next thing we've got over is the Borg filter. The Borg filter is a Vactro filter, and it's capable of doing just regular low-pass filtering, or you can change it to you've got a select knob where you can select between low-pass and high-pass. And in the middle, you've got notch pass, which is a mix of the two. And I'm going to go ahead and just open the filter with an envelope. in theory. Actually. So with the higher resonance, it gets a really nice growl, and then when you click the resonance all the way down, it becomes a low-pass gate, which actually closes the filter at the same time that it affects the volume. So it acts as a VCA with a filter, but this actually is this filter is a Vactral filter, and it has a slow response that is really nice. It has a real nice decay, like a natural decay, and it's really good for percussive sounds. So, and it has a cousin that is the Borg 2. This is actually the Borg 1. The difference between them, the Borg 1 has white knobs, the Borg 2 has black knobs. The Borg 1 is a slower response, so if you're looking for what is typically called the Bugla Bongo type patch, where you want those kind of percussive sounds with a slower response, then you want the Borg 1. And the Borg 2 is a faster response filter with a more aggressive resonance response also. It's got a much more growly sound. If you crank up the resonance on it, it kind of barks at you. And next, moving on, there is the Boogie filter, which is, it's another Vactral filter that was designed after the Borg. And it is a low-pass filter. It's not a mixture of a low-pass filter with a low-pass gate, but it's a low-pass filter with taps out for your 6 dB, 12 dB, 18 dB, and 24 dB slopes. And it has a faster response than the Borg does, and it's also a smoother resonance response. And actually, hold on. Get the right thing plugged in. There we go. So it's a Vactral also. It has a really nice smooth sound, and it's faster than the Borgs are. And it's really cool also because you can mix the different slope outputs and get different filter responses. Like kind of you can mix it the 4 outputs with another modular mixer and get kind of experimental filter designs and make new slopes. Okay, and then moving over next, we have the noise ring, and the noise ring is it's a sort of a semi-random generator for stepped values. It generates values that it pulls from an internal analog noise source, and it puts them into steps into a register and then plays them back. And it can either be a fully random device, or it has several controls. So you can change the possibility of a value changing, and you can also change how much the values will change with these 2 knobs, and these knobs are modulatable also. It has an internal clock source, so you don't have to clock it from something externally, and it also can accept an external clock, and it can be the clock can be CV'd from another module, and it also gives you an output for the clock as it progresses each step, and it gives you an output for the analog noise. And let me see if I can get this going on something. So it can actually run fast enough to be like kind of like a weird bass oscillator. It doesn't track volt per octave, but it can do some really cool things and kind of acts as its own experimental oscillator as well. And it's just it's a module that is known to be kind of more than the sum of its parts. It's a really funky module that a lot of people just love the character of it and the way that it generates its values. It's it's got a lot of character, like I said, and people like it a lot. So then moving along, we've got the envelator, which is the device that I've been playing with to make envelopes, and it's a simple, like starts off basically as a simple AD envelope. So attack and decay, and you can set it to self-cycle. And you can also you can set a delay time between the cycles with this knob. And what's cool is that everything's CVable, so you can CV the delay time between cycles, you can CV the attack time, the decay time. Also, if you turn the attack modulation CV knob when nothing's plugged into it, that normals into changing the curve of the envelope. And of course, you can also just trigger it externally. It also has a square output at the end of the cycle, so you can use it as a CV clock source. All right, so next is the JAG, the Joystick Axis Generator. This is a module that seems really simple at first, but it's really cool because it takes any two modulation inputs, which it says joystick on it, and you can use it with a joystick, but to me it's much more fun if you plug in, like, say, a sequencer and an envelope, or an LFO and a sequencer, things like that, or two noise rings. And it's easy to illustrate with a joystick. Basically what happens is you put in two modulation inputs, like a joystick is an X and a Y, so that's two modulation, two voltage sources. And you can see that distributed as I move the joystick around. Turn it up. So what's happening is that there are 8 outputs that are around this circle, and they're voltage outputs. And as you select different positions in the XY path, the voltage changes accordingly to the position of the X and the Y. In addition to those 8 outputs, there's also a dome output, which is center. So as the voltages go towards center, and there's edge, which is the opposite of center. And you can flip it between unipolar and bipolar. And it's a ton of fun just to kind of add complexity to your patches that's interrelated, especially if it doesn't even take a large module to really start playing with it. So it's a lot of fun, and there's nothing really like it. And it just adds a lot of depth to patches, I find. And then a few other modules to run through. There is the attenuator, which is just a dual attenuator, so for just turning down volumes of things, which is massively important, actually. And it also has a wave rectification built in, diode wave rectification. So it has half wave and full wave rectification. And there are jumpers on back to choose between them. And you can use that to, say if you've got a bipolar LFO or other modulation source, you can, with full wave, it actually, if you've got a sine wave, it flips the negative portion of the sine wave, so you get a double hump sort of thing. And with half wave, it just lops off the bottom one. But it's a fun little device and really a good value. And then let's see what else. We've got the VCA, which is a voltage-controlled attenuator, and it has it's a 4 HP also, and it has 2 VCAs in that size. And you can switch between linear, like standard VCA response, or exponential for really fast response. There's a trim on the back. You can trim it up so that the exponential like really clips really loudly and nastily, and that's a lot of fun. I'll leave mine like that because generally I just use the VCA in linear mode, and then when I want to make noise, I flip it into exponential mode. And that's just a button, so you can have it both ways on each one of them. And let's see, also we've got the X-Mix, which the X-Mix is a 2-input mixer. Has an X and a Y input with a level control for each one. And then there is a fade control, basically to fade between them. And you can CV that. So a crossfader has a lot of uses. Like you can use it as a wave shaper of sorts. You can use it to crossfade between modulation sources going to another device. You can use it as a VCA in a pinch. Also, the X input normals down into the Y input, and you can flip the polarity on it, and you can use it as a VC polarizer. And it has an input for expanding, so you can plug in another module into the mix. And it has a positive and a negative output. And then there is also, coming out pretty soon, the Malekko Fade, which is a Vactral crossfader, which is just a cool little 4 HP crossfader. And not only is it a CV crossfader with a really nice smooth response, it has CV over the Vactral level. And so you can actually change the level of the sound coming out, kind of like a VCA, but it's a little different because it actually changes the curve of the crossfade at the same time. And you get some really cool kind of amplitude sequences. Like people don't usually think of amplitude sequences when they think of sequencing, but you get some really nice textural sounds coming from it without even changing the pitch. And let's see. Otherwise than that, we've got the output module, which is an 1/8 inch to 1/4 output that gives you some different phase outputs. If you plug in, there's a little chart on the site, but it gives you if you plug in your A and your B and you plug in stereo connection to the output, you get phase offsets and different types of outputs there. And it's a unity output. It's not a headphone amp, but it's really nice for just, if you need a 1/4 inch output with some nice utility. And I'm seeing. Okay, I think that's it.
See the light again on the joystick?
Yes. And yeah, that's a lot of fun. Like I have actually, like here's the two noise rings plugged into it. So anyway, yeah, if you guys want to check them out, I'll be over next room, so anything you want to see.